In my opinion, it's still going to be a struggle because it's such an ingrained thing in our society, starting back from when slavery first started. You know, black people who were brought from Africa to become slaves were, you know, taught that they were not as beautiful as their white masters, or when masters would have families with the slaves and they would produce biracial or multiracial children, the biracial children would automatically be put in a situation where they would have a better life because they would probably not have to work in the field, or they wouldn't have to live out in the slave quarters. They could actually probably live in the big house with the master. And so that became a setup for this whole intercultural divide between African American people because of skin tone, because of hair texture. And I think because we still struggle with it as a culture, I think that society as a whole is not going to be able to heal from it until we can heal as a culture, until we can set aside our differences. And we still haven't been able to do that. African American people still have not been able to set aside their views about what beauty actually is. I would think that because of the fact that our hair texture is so different, it sets us apart, and it shows our heritage because our hair is so different than most other cultures. Our body type is, you know, somewhat different than most cultures too. Most of the time, African American people have, you know, fuller lips, you know, fuller nose. For the longest time, African American women were taught that their hair, you know, was not beautiful because of the fact that it was really curly. And so we began straightening our hair. And once we started straightening our hair, we didn't know how to go back to our curly hair because it had been decades and centuries. And, you know, since we had been, you know, in a situation where we had our natural hair. And so when natural hair started becoming more popular, we didn't even know how to take care of our hair because we hadn't been wearing it for all these hundreds of years. And so now it's come to a point where it's like we need to go back and educate ourselves about who we are, about how to take care of ourselves in our own natural state. I think it's against the culture because it makes it makes a statement. It makes a statement that, okay, my naturally curly hair is not good enough, so I'm going to straighten it. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to it to make it look different than what it actually is. And I think also too, you know, we've gotten so caught up in the whole thing about our natural hair that some women think that having their own natural hair would be more of a burden to them than having straight hair, because they're like, well, I don't know how to take care of it. How am I going to comb it? I don't know how to comb it. If I put a straightener on it, I know how to comb the straightener. It's easier to work with. And so they use that as a excuse as to why they won't explore their own natural hair. Hair is a very complex thing, and I think just putting people in the category saying, okay, you have straight hair, you have natural hair, meaning that you're more culturally conscious, is actually, there's not a black and white. There's this gray line that is really hard to understand. Why someone who is as powerful and as culturally conscious as Michelle Obama and Oprah, why do they still straighten their hair? I don't know. But does it mean that they're not a good representation of who we are? No, it doesn't mean that. I think they're still a great representation of us.